Hot one out here in the Sandhills today. It's going to be 102 degrees. Not a day for being outside. But I got my sprinkling on and I got my watering done. And so I'm going to go inside, spend the rest of the day in air-conditioned comfort, thinking about planning for my men's book clubs for the fall. So stick around and I'll give you my short selections that men can easily read and come have a great book club discussion if they want to. By the way, that's a tomato plant. What do you think this is, Colorado? Today we're going to talk about 3 shorter books for men's book clubs. Thanks for joining me. What we're talking about is not just for men alone, but for anybody who's interested in having a great book discussion with books that are compelling, but in this case, very short and take a small amount of time to read. I think our mission is to encourage people to read more in spite of all of the screen distractions they get from technology in the world we live in. Well-written short books are ideal, especially for men in book clubs. We may not finish our assignment to read a long book before book club meets, but a short one we can probably squeeze in the time, maybe over a lunch break just before bedtime in chunks, but we can get it done. And fortunately there are some really good books for discussion around that are also short. I think what we want to do is encourage people who want to have good conversations about books to start with shorter books and to consider them for their book clubs as well. Hi, I'm Liam. I'm a retired history professor. And what I try to do occasionally is offer 3 different alternatives for anything that we're talking about. So today it's short books for men's book clubs. We're going to have 3 short, beautifully written, and discussable books. The emphasis is on quality. Let's get started. My first recommendation for a short book is Painting as a Pastime by Winston Churchill. Now, this is not strictly history, but it offers insight into Winston Churchill. Many people, especially Americans, don't realize that Churchill was involved in the government at high levels in Britain during World War I. And in the darkest days of World War I, he was involved in forming strategy. And one of the things he was involved in was a campaign in the Dardanelles to preserve shipping into the Black Sea. The Germans had an ally in Turkey, and they were the ones in charge of the Dardanelles. The mission was to get control of that piece of land from them so they could encourage shipping. And it turned out to be one of the greatest disasters in World War I for the Allies. Churchill, because of his involvement, was wrongly blamed for the campaign. And after that, he remained in disgrace until World War II. So it was during this time, tremendously depressed, didn't know who his friends were. He had aspirations to serve his country in high places, and that looked like that wasn't going to be reachable anymore. And so his sister-in-law came to him and said, have you ever considered taking up painting to relax and address the tension? All of us receive advice, lots of advice, when we're depressed. I don't take most of it. Churchill, to his credit, was curious and fascinated. He took up painting, and painting not only relaxed him, but he discovered he actually had artistic talent. Now, this book is based on a 1920 magazine article that Churchill wrote, so it's very short. And the nice thing about this book is it's made for book clubs. So in the back, it's got a series of recommended questions for a group and further resources. To give you a flavor for the book, I wanted to read a brief passage from it. Churchill writes, to be really happy and really safe, one ought to have at least 2 or 3 hobbies, and they must all be real. It's no use starting late in life to say, I'll take an interest in this or that. Such an attempt only aggravates the strain of mental effort. A man may acquire great knowledge of topics unconnected with his daily work, and yet hardly get any benefit or relief. It's no use doing what you like. You've got to like what you do. Broadly speaking, human beings may be divided into three classes: those who are toiled to death, those who are worried to death, and those who are bored to death. That'd make a great conversation starter for a book club. The second book recommendation that I have for you today is a book called Babette's Feast. In the United States, this book is written by someone named Isak Dinesen, but that's just a pseudonym. The real author is a Danish author named Karen Blixen. And I've noticed now that new editions of Babette's Feast coming out in the United States now have her real name. This is fiction. Isn't that strange that I, being a historian, would recommend fiction? But novels can reveal two things. First of all, novels can be examples of good writing. History ought to be good writing. And novels often tell us more about the culture in which they were written than even a history written about that time. So I recommend that you read fiction. So here's the story. Two old women grew up in the home of a very strict pastor. It's a story about unfulfilled potential in life. These two women never married, and when they were younger, they had tremendous opportunities. One had a singing voice, and the other was a beauty. The singer was offered an opportunity to train her voice and sing in the opera, and her father blocked her way. The beauty had an opportunity to serve the Queen of Sweden at court, and she missed her opportunity to do that as well. They never reached their full potential. And when their father dies, the care of his congregation, which was very strict, fell to these two spinster ladies. In their old age, a friend recommends a housekeeper to them. And a woman comes as a refugee from violence and war in France. This is in the 19th century. And comes to serve them as a cook and housekeeper in their home. And that's basically what the story is about. The story turns on a momentous event when they are about to throw a great party for their father's 100th birthday. He's been dead, but they were to get together to celebrate close to that birthday. Their cook and housekeeper, whose name is Babette, informs them that she has won 10,000 francs in the French lottery. As a housekeeper, she changed and made their lives better and even enriched them financially because of the way she managed the resources of the house. They began to mourn and fret that this prize she had won would mean she was going to leave them. And the story goes on from there. One little passage here at the beginning of the book that gives a little bit of color about their life. The dean, that's their father, the pastor, had married late in life and by now had long been dead. His disciples were becoming fewer in number every year. Whiter or balder or harder of hearing, they were even becoming somewhat careless and quarrelsome, so that sad little schisms would arise in the congregation. But they still gathered together to read and to interpret the word. They had all known the dean's daughters as little girls. To them, they were even now very small sisters, precious for their dear father's sake. In the yellow house, they felt that their master's spirit was with them. Here they were at home and at peace. These two ladies had a French maid of all work named Babette. It's a strange thing for a couple of Puritan women in a small Norwegian town. It might even seem to call for an explanation. The people of Berlevåg found the explanation in the sisters' piety and kindness of heart. For the old dean's daughters spent their time and their small incomes in works of charity. No sorrowful or distressed creature knocked on their door in vain. And Babette had come to that door 12 years ago as a friendless fugitive, almost mad with grief and fear. But the true reason for Babette's presence in the two sisters' house was to be found farther back in time and deeper down in the domains of human hearts. I just love her writing. And you might know her. She also wrote Out of Africa. But in my opinion, Babette's Feast is her real gift to the world. My final book is by G.K. Chesterton. It's called The Club of Weird Trades because that's what this word meant to them when this was written early in the 20th century. So it carries the connotation of weird trades. G.K. Chesterton, a philosopher, theologian, there are 6 interrelated short mysteries solved by a sleuth named Basil Grant. Even though there are 6 stories, they're very short. The mysteries center around a society with members who invent their own occupations and find their livelihood by it. The whole book features quirky characters and clever plots. This is an early work by Chesterton, and the critics have panned it many times because they say they don't think it's his best work. But I've read a lot of Chesterton, and this remains my favorite book. It's short, and it has a wonderful sleuth to solve these mysteries. Basil Grant is a retired judge who forced into early retirement because he's wacky. But he seems to solve these mysteries one after the other. His brother is actually a detective, and he has to bail his brother out to find the real reason behind each of the mysteries and the real culprits who need to be caught. It's funny. And let me read a more extensive passage from this book. The setting here is that Basil and the narrator of the book, called the Cherub, are riding on top of one of those double-decker buses through London. And they happen to be going through a part of East London that is considered a bad area. As they're riding through, Basil and the Cherub are talking to each other. Basil is commenting on the environment, and this is what he says. "You must always remember also," said Grant to me in his heavy, abstracted way, when I urged a view, "that the very vileness of the life of these ordered plebeian places bears witness to the victory of the human soul. I agree with you, they have to live in something worse than barbarism. They have to live in fourth-rate civilization. But yet I am practically certain that the majority of people who live here are good people. And being good is an adventure far more violent and daring than sailing around the world. Besides," "Go on," I said. No answer came. "Go on," I said, looking up. The big blue eyes of Basil Grant were standing out of his head, and he was paying no attention to me. He was staring over the side of the bus. "What's the matter?" I asked, peering over also. "It's very odd," said Grant at last, grimly, "that I should have been caught out like this at the very moment of my optimism. I said all these people were good, and there goes the wickedest man in London." "Where?" I asked, leaning over even further. "Where?" "Oh, I was right enough," he went on, in that strange, continuous, and sleepy tone which always angered his hearers at acute moments. "I was right enough when I said all these people were good. Oh, they're heroes. They're saints. Now and then they may perhaps steal a spoon or two. They may beat a wife or two with the poker, but they are saints all the same. They are angels. They are robed in white. They are clad with wings and halos, at any rate compared to that man." "Which man?" I cried again, and then my eye caught the figure at which Basil's bull's eyes were glaring. He was a slim, smooth person passing very quickly among the quickly passing crowd. But though there was nothing about him sufficient to attract a startled notice, there was quite enough to demand a curious consideration when once that notice was attracted. He wore a black top hat, but there was enough in it of those strange curves whereby the decadent artists of the 80s tried to turn the top hat into something as rhythmic as an Etruscan vase. His hair, which was largely gray, was curled with the instinct of one who appreciated the gradual beauty of gray and silver. The rest of his face was oval, and I thought rather oriental. He had two black tufts of mustache. "What has he done?" I asked. "I'm not sure of the details," said Grant, "but his besetting sin is a desire to intrigue to the disadvantage of others. Probably he has adopted some imposture or other to effect his plan." "What plan?" I asked. "If you know all about him, why don't you tell me why he is the wickedest man in England? What is his name?" Basil Grant stared at me for some moments. "I think you've made a mistake in my meaning," he said. "I don't know his name. I never saw him before in my life." Club of Queer Trades has a lot of passages like that your book club readers will love. I have suggested today 3 books. Painting is Pastime by Winston Churchill, Karen Blixen, Babette's Feast, and G.K. Chesterton, The Club of Weird Trades. So glad that you joined me today. I have a real passion for reading and for history. I plan to post regularly, and I want to encourage you to enjoy reading, and may God bless you. Take a moment and subscribe to this channel if you haven't done so. Give me a like if you enjoy this kind of content, and make a comment, perhaps something like, "What short books have you discovered that you think would make great book club selections?" Thanks for being with me.